Hello and welcome to Bags of Action. My name's Steve and this is a 5-minute review of Eye for an Eye from 2019. The film is also known as The Poison Rose. This is because it was based upon a novel by the same name that was written by Richard Salvatore, and he was involved in writing the screenplay. The film was released by Lionsgate and has an all-star cast including John Travolta, Morgan Freeman, Brendan Fraser, Famke Janssen, Robert Patrick, and Peter Stormare. In the lead is John Travolta playing a character called Carson Phillips, who's a private investigator who has to go back to his hometown in Texas to investigate a missing person. Right from the beginning, I realised this was probably based upon a novel because the film has a lot of voiceovers where Travolta's character Carson is telling us stuff about how he feels about people, how he feels about a situation, this kind of internal monologue that normally you'd get in a book on the page, but here we're having it provided as a voiceover. So it felt a little odd straight away with that. The other thing about this film is that it's not what it appears to be. On the surface, it seems like quite a straightforward crime thriller, but as it goes on, you realise it's actually a lot more convoluted and that no one is really who they appear to be. And I think that's probably part of the problem. There's so much in a novel that you obviously have to unpack. And when you try and transfer it to the screen, you have to strip out some things. You can't cram the same amount of material from a 400-page book into something that's 2 hours or an hour and a half long. It just can't be done. So you have to lose a lot of material. And I think they probably should have taken out more. It's not that I couldn't follow the film. I just think it would have benefited it from making it a little bit cleaner and simpler, and then you've got a bit more clarity in the screenplay. In terms of performances, I was actually quite impressed. John Travolta has done some great performances, without a shadow of a doubt, but he's also done some real turkeys where he's chewing the scenery and he's absolutely gone to town and he's dialed it up to Nicolas Cage levels. In this, he was actually quite good. He wasn't over the top, he wasn't crazy, his character wasn't bonkers. Whether it's the director or it was just the screenplay, it seemed to work for him very, very well. He had scenes with Morgan Freeman, who as always is absolutely brilliant. Maybe it was working against some people like this that he was able to find a balance. Famke Janssen plays this sort of femme fatale and an old flame from Carson's childhood, someone that he knew and loved and left, and now he's come back home, and all of these things are piled on. And there's a lot of stuff there that's really juicy and really interesting. Old friends who's now become the sheriff, the local drunk, the local this person, that person. He knows them all. And yet he left this all behind, started a new life, and he wanted to get away from it. So he comes back and he's in the middle of this, supposed to be a very simple case. It turns out to be something really more complicated and a lot more difficult for him and less straightforward. The troubles from his home, from Los Angeles where he lives, have also followed him as well, so they never really go away. The standout performance for me, other than Travolta, is probably Brendan Fraser. In the last few years, he's done more TV, voiceovers and this sort of stuff. He went away for a while and came back. But in this, he plays this really creepy, weird and eccentric doctor who you don't really trust, and he has a really strange voice and he walks odd. And he has strange kind of dress sense, and it's fascinating. He's this jumbled mess of people and bits and pieces to create this character, and it was absolutely brilliant to watch. In terms of action in this film, there are some set pieces that are quite good, but there's this strange kind of laid-back, laconic style to the whole film in some ways, even in the tense moments, because Travolta's character Carson is following the clues, working on the case and trying to work out who actually brought him home for Texas and why is he really there, because the person he was supposed to be finding has been dead for a long time. So this is all being part of a larger plan that someone is manipulating him. Let's start with some positives before I go on to the negatives. As I've said, the acting is really good. The action that we have in the films is good. No one's performance is over the top and too ridiculous, so that was nice. The cast is all solid. Now some of the negatives. I think the plot is too convoluted and too complex. They were trying to make it too much like the book, with the voiceover and the style. And yes, you could say, well, that's the kind of hard-boiled detective style that they're going for, and you do get that in movies, which is true, but it didn't really work, and I don't think it was necessary. It was a case of show and tell. We could work out how he felt about people, and they could have just shown us instead of having the voiceover just tell us these things. We can get great amounts of information from person's body language, how they deliver lines, their expressions, all of this stuff. We don't need to have the voiceover on top. Stripping back some of that and also some of the other elements that must be tied to the novel, I think would have made this better. I mean, it's not as if the film is particularly long, it just seemed to get overly complicated for no real reason, and I think if they'd focused more on some of the other key elements, it would have been better. So overall, I was never really bored with this film. It did hold my attention throughout the entire runtime, but I think there were definitely some problems with it being translated from a book. So, I like the acting, as I've said, and there's some good points, but just some of the other things really bugged me, and I think they could have been improved. So it's not a bad film. So I'm going to have to say I'm going to give it a solid 3 out of 5 and say, have you seen it? What did you think? Do you agree? Let me know. Get in touch with us in all the usual ways. You can email us, go into our Facebook group and talk to us there. Don't forget to like and subscribe to this channel. We're on Ko-fi. If you want to buy us a coffee over there, you can do that as well. And we'll be back next week with a new episode.